So, all right, guys, welcome to the second lecture. This lecture is going to be on databases. So today we're going to dive deep into that, and you're going to learn everything you need to know about them. So just a quick announcements before we actually get into the lecture. For your assignments, demos are very helpful for understanding and completing the assignment. So we just posted the demo from the first week. So on the YouTube channel, just look up Cornell App Dev on YouTube and you should be able to find it. Take advantage of those and rewatch them as necessary. You can also check the syllabus for updated office hours. Those are very helpful as well. Use the test cases file. Those were just posted on the Ed today. Also, a quick notice, we extended the deadline to Wednesday for A1. So you don't have to use any slip days so that you can properly try out your A1 with the test file. Save your Postman requests and collections. Remember to export them like we showed you in the demo and make sure you submit those or else you will lose a lot of points. Write your documentation and follow the API specification exactly as it is in the textbook. And then miscellaneous, fill out the weekly feedback form that's also found in the assignment handout. They're worth 5% of your final grade, so do make sure that you do that. Okay, now moving on to just a little bit of review real quick. Reviewing the client server model. Clients are computers, phones, laptops, tablets. Those are you guys basically. Servers are also computers, but think like a desktop with no screen. They just store all the information. And clients send requests to servers and servers reply with responses. So requests, those are initiated by a client and they're sent to a specific URL, i.e. google.com like that /search. And they contain the domain, the root path, in other words, where to go to access the information. And URL parameters, those are optional. Those are dependent on whether you want to grab a specific piece of information, and that's how you direct the server to do so. Methods, those indicate the nature of the request. So remember, like a get, a post, a delete, what are you actually trying to do? That's the method. And meaningful data is sent in the body of a request, and we specifically use JSON for that. So responses, those are triggered by a client request, and we return confirmation of requested operation. So that's again, those status codes that we talked about, like 404 if there's an error, 200 if you're good, 201. Those are the response, and they indicate success at an abstract level. And we send the JSON data in a body, just like a request, back to client to make sure that everything worked properly. We got the information as needed. So yeah, just going over again, the client sends a request to the server. There's a root triggered, a data operation, whichever one that is specified by the method. And then you return the response back to the client, and you should hopefully get all the information and data that you need. Okay, so now moving on to actually new topics. We're going to be talking about data persistence to start. So here you can see just a quick little graphic. And this is representative of the data structure that we used in our tasks last week. And the answer here is dictionary, right? But what is actually the issue with that? Or what are some of the downsides, the deficiencies? Well, because they're stored, they're hard-coded, stopping the server, in other words, means that the data is lost, right? Because it's only being created when the server is being run. The other thing is that it doesn't scale as efficiently. It's very time-consuming and it's hard to continually keep adding into the dictionary new pieces of information or new fields. And there's also no formatting enforcement. So without formatting, things can get kind of chaotic and, in other words, less efficient. So those are some of the deficiencies with the data. So we want to actually keep track of the data that we've updated. And how do you do that? Well, with databases. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. That's why they're important. It basically fixes a lot of the deficiencies that are from dictionaries, which we used in the first week. So the fundamentals of databases, it's a collection of organized information. That's pretty much like a basic definition. And they're designed to store data. It's easy to access, update, and manage data. That is the key point there. That's why we use them. That's why they fix the deficiencies in dictionaries. And they're implemented as a collection of tables. So for instance, if we take the Instagram app, the way Instagram is formatted is you have a table for users, a table for posts. So all these different categories or models you would have a table for, and that's where all the information is stored. So you would store all of like the user's personal information in the user table. Their saved posts would go in the post table respectively. And that's how they function in a broad view. So yeah, going more into tables so you guys can actually see it instead of getting such an abstract idea. You can see on screen, columns have a descriptive name and a specific data type. So everyone on the table is going to have an ID. So 1, 2, 3, that's that leftmost row that you see there. And that's going to help you identify which specific entry you want to access. And you can see we have like name, age, and hobby, for example, and the rows contain a set of values and each one represents one item. So right here, what I was just talking about with the ID, they are unique identifiers, and like I mentioned, they're required for every item in the table. This is so that we can accurately reference each entrance or each entry in the table. IDs automatically increment, so unlike how we had to do a little counter last time with the dictionary, again, databases are more efficient, they're more scalable. These IDs automatically increment every time you put in a new entry to the database. IDs of removed items do not get reused. So you can see here, we delete ID1 and we make a new one, and it's not like we remake ID1 or we put an ID1, we start at 4. So that's another key point. They do not get reused. Every ID is unique. That's why we call them the unique identifiers. And a database does not equal a table. That's a very important point that we want to stress. Databases are made up of tables and they consist of tables, but they are not the same. They are not a table themselves. Database, like it's multiple tables. It's a collection of them. So for example, like I mentioned, we could have like a users table and a post table for Instagram. So the users table would store information about the user, like their age, their hobby, their name, obviously. And a post table would have like the description, like the caption maybe, how many likes it has, the name, who posted it, any more information you'd like to include, you can all set that yourself. So we can see here that both of them are going to have an ID unique identifier, because once again, we're stressing the point, it's required for every table. So yeah, you can see which one is a little easier to kind of read through. And also it's easier to get information for because you just grab it by the row. Versus here's what we were actually doing with the dictionary, which is what we would have had to type out, which is all the brackets and then all the fields individually. And we would have had to have our own counter, etc. All the things that make it way less efficient than the database. So what are some of the benefits? Well, all the data is structured. So what this means is, let's say we have a users table and a name field, and you try to add an integer to the name field, the database will throw an error because the name is a string. And so it will automatically catch things like that. So all the data will be structured, and if you ever make a mistake, your database will tell you and you will catch that error. The next thing is that it scales very well. If you keep adding key value pairs to a dictionary in Python, it ends up taking a lot of storage. And databases, like for reasons that we don't need to go into yet in the course, are optimized to store data in a way more efficient manner than the key value pairs that are automatically built into dictionaries in Python. And the last thing is that it's very easy to query data, and query data basically means search and get. So it's very easy to search and get data. You can basically ask the database questions, like there are commands that you would literally type in, like search, like some field of entry in, and then you name the database table. And it will go in and it will find all of those relevant data points or entry points. So it's a lot easier to search for data and get data. And that's extremely helpful for larger data sets when you start, making actually fully functional apps where you have, let's say, like 150 users. Even that alone is like so much information, it'd be almost impossible without being able to query through it. So for example, let's say we want to quickly find out which users are like over 18. This is like a quick little example. We would just go through all the values. If the age, their field is over 18, we append them to this list and then we return that list. So does anyone have any quick questions about that, or does that make sense to everyone? Yep. Okay, good. So that is how we did it, like you mentioned in the lecture one. Here is how I mentioned earlier, how you would do it in with databases. Select star is just what field you want from users where age is 18. A lot simpler, a lot easier, and works way more efficiently as well. So you can see those are the benefits of the databases. That's just one of them. So now we're going to get into a structured query language, or in other words, SQL. And so that's what we'll be using in this course. It's what a lot of people use industry-wide. So the previous query that you just saw, this was in SQL, and we'll be using this language to access data from our database. And so a quick overview, it's a language for communicating with databases specifically, and it executes those CRUD that we talked about, create, retrieve, update, and delete operations. And so SQL is just how we're going to communicate with the database to get the information or query the information that we need. And it has multiple keywords. Select is a retrieval keyword, as you saw. We want to get people whose age were over 18. So how do we actually create a table? Well, the keyword for creating a table is very nicely create table. So you would just do create table in all caps. The all caps is important. It is case sensitive. And then you would put in your table name, whatever it be. And then you start just putting in your column, which name it would be, and then the data type after it. So it would be like name and then string, right? And that's how you know that every name in there is going to be a string. And that's how, like we mentioned earlier, your database can check. If you ever accidentally put an integer or any other data type other than a string into the name field, the database will immediately catch that error and flag that so that you don't have missed fields in your database. So this is a very common simple table, and I'm just going to go through all the fields here because these are very important. So you see we have ID, name, age, and email. And again, those are going to be at the top of the table like you saw in the graphic earlier. And those all caps to the right of it are the descriptions and their types. And so ID, we have integer, primary key, auto increment, and those are all in caps. So integer means that the data type is an integer, right? And we want all of our IDs to be integers, 1, 2, 3, 4. Primary key means that this field that we're going to be using is going to be uniquely identified to each user. So that is very important for the ID. That's how we make sure that we don't confuse any user with one another. It's why those IDs that we mentioned before in the table are not reusable. When you delete one, it's gone. And so that's important to distinguish all the entry points in the table. And then, like I said, auto increment is what I mentioned earlier, where with that keyword, every new entrance or entry into the table will auto increment the ID for you. And so you can keep track of all the new entries. And text not null is kind of what the name applies. It's a text, which is not null, basically means it will not accept nothing as an entry. Some points you can have, like for example, on Instagram, it's not required to have a bio. So your field on the user table would be bio text. And you wouldn't need the not null because it's okay to have a null field there. You don't need a text. But username or email is not null because those are like required. So actually inserting data into the tables, again, we have a few keywords, and thankfully they're all pretty straightforward. It's insert into. You can see it's green right there. That's the keyword. All caps again, case sensitive. And we have the table name, and then you have the columns that you want to insert into. And then you have another keyword, values, after that. And then after the values, you put in all the values that you want to insert. And so the reason for this is that we can skip entering the names of the columns if we want to enter nothing in it. So we can specify exactly which columns we actually want to enter into and then put in those values. So going into an example, or yeah, you can omit columns if inserting into all the columns. That's just a quick little shortcut. But it's generally like bad practice because it could still mess up something in the table. And you generally, just with all code, you want to be very specific, especially when operating on large sets of data. So while it is possible, we do not recommend it. Yeah, and here's a few reasons why. So like I said, changes in column order can break it, so it's not always safe. It's also just not as easy to read because when you specify the columns, you can easily see what values go into the columns. And so like this is a quick example. We specify the columns, name, age, and email. and then we give it all the values that we'd want to put into the respective columns. So John is the name, 21 is the age, and that's the email. And that would insert all that data into the table. So retrieving data. So here you have another two keywords, select and then from. And so select is, again, we put in the columns that we want to select from, and then we just put the table name, and that's it. You'll get all the data from those respective columns from that table. If you do a select asterisk, that will select the columns as seen previously. And we can also specify conditions with a where keyword. So select column from table name where, and then where after is another keyword where after it comes a condition. So remember, previously we had the select star from users where age is greater than 18. So the age is greater than 18 is that condition, and that's where we want to retrieve it. We want to retrieve it where people are older than 18. You could put in obviously any condition that's relevant to your data retrieval. So yeah, just going back to the example, that's pretty much what we had. So select star from users where age is greater than or equal to 18. And so lastly, going into updating data, the keyword for updating data is update. So again, pretty straightforward with the table name. And then set is the second keyword. And here the syntax is column equals value. And each of those are respective. So column 1 goes with value 1, column 2 goes with value 2. You can again have a keyword where to signify a condition. If you don't have the condition, then it would just automatically update the data. And yeah, so make sure that you are specifically setting the values to those specific columns. So for example, you would have user set email equal to that. So it would go into the email and says that, and where ID equals 1. So that is telling us to specifically go to that field entry with ID 1 and update that specific email for that one user to be jsmith@gmail.com as just an example. Okay, and so lastly, deleting data. So the keyword for deleting is delete from, and you do a table name, and then you have your where condition. The where condition here is extremely more important than in the other ones, because if you get the condition, then there is no condition and you'll delete everything from your database, right? Which makes sense. So the deleting will almost always have a where and a condition to make sure that you're not, unless you are trying to delete everything. So, for example, let's say we were just trying to delete the first entry in the table or the second, we would put where ID equals 1, and we would then delete that user. And that concludes the lecture for today on SQL.